I just realised as I sat down to film this video that the two most recent trips to the cinema have both been in relation to Monkey, which is kind of bizarre. But on a more serious note, it's been a little while since we've discussed anything ape-related on the channel, especially this movie franchise, and so I recently checked out Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, the fourth film in the modern take on the Planet of the Apes franchise. I hold the reboot trilogy in very high regard, solid movies overall, but with Caesar's story at an end, I was skeptical about really where the franchise could go in future films. I'll share my general thoughts on the new movie in this video, but if you're concerned about spoilers, I'll be blunt, there's not really much to spoil. Sadly, this new film isn't very eventful beyond following standard conflict storylines and referencing the previous films. Considering how Rise of the Planet of the Apes hit our screens over 10 years ago, these new films have aged remarkably well. And Caesar's trilogy may have come to a sacrificial end, but I love how this new beginning doesn't ignore what came before it. Yes, this is a new chapter in the franchise, but Caesar is still just as relevant generations later. In short, he is basically the ape messiah at this point. He's a prominent figure in ape society, known by many for what he did to liberate his found family in the last film, and the new film honours what Maurice promised at the end of War for the Planet of the Apes. The way apes are now essentially worshipping the existence of Caesar is kind of ironic in my opinion. You'd think that an intelligent ape society wouldn't fall into any form of religious entrapment, but that's more or less where we're heading, and with this in mind, we have what I'm hoping will be the foundation of a new movie trilogy, and like many, I do have mixed thoughts and feelings towards the film Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Like I mentioned before, this film is mostly uneventful, it's very slow in terms of pacing, but arguably that does allow you to connect with the new lore and characters, and this is where we follow a new branch of ape society referred to as Eagle Clan, apes that specialize in stealing eagle eggs, raising the baby birds, and then training them, and I appreciate how this was an integral element to the film, and not just an empty detail for the sake of including something unique. And this is where we're introduced to our new protagonist, ape Noah, and we get a glimpse at his life in the village. All appears to be peaceful, but we know that's not going to last. With there now being multiple factions of apes, not all apes follow the good word of Caesar. Instead, apes start to twist the values that were once held sacred by ape kind, and the plot is very basic in my eyes revolving around this, acting like a catalyst for the following events. Raiders attack Noah's village, which I felt was honestly pretty abrupt. And it wasn't all that impactful because we didn't really connect with any of these new characters beyond the three apes that we followed at the very beginning, but I will say seeing apes in masks riding horses with electric staffs, that was pretty wild and did set some high expectations going forward. With the village more or less decimated, we continue to follow Noah's story where he is shown to be the last remaining ape in the village, giving him a personal mission where all of the other apes have actually been kidnapped, and he must now track down the raiders to free Eagle Clan. And it felt as though there was a lot of promise and intrigue with this idea, but sadly, the execution ran out of steam pretty quickly. Most of the film is set up for the eventual rescue, which isn't without its complications. When Noah is tracking the missing clan, he comes across an orangutan named Raka, who was by far my favourite character. He's apparently the last member of the Order of Caesar before the will of Caesar was twisted, and I really like how they retain certain character traits from the original 60s iteration of these films. For example, orangutans were considered the more intelligent of ape kind, just like our beloved Dr. Zaius. Dr. Zaius, Dr. Zaius! Being well spoken and knowledgeable about ape history, just like Noah, we learn about the state of the world now that the apes are more or less the dominant species. One element that bugged me about this quote-unquote history lesson was the question of time. How much time has passed exactly? Well, the film begins with a vague many generations later, and I've read several sources online that mention 300 years have passed since the Caesar trilogy, and personally, I don't really think that's too believable. The remnants of mankind are still very heavily visible. Evolved humans, meaning the non-primitive like your typical Nova, do still exist, And this leads me to one of the more intriguing elements of the film. A young human female is seen following Noah throughout, and in a forced twist, she is revealed to be a normal, talking human being, and not primitive, ticking yet another box where we are given a shocking scene. She tells Noah that her name is May and is seeking help to stop the next big bad of the franchise. And that takes us to Proximus Caesar, who is a very fun villain that I was really hoping to see more of. Characters like him are very interesting because he's depicted as an antagonist, but he is arguably not the villain he's made out to be. His motivations are fascinating because he's an ape that seeks knowledge for his own benefits. In his mind, he's looking to therefore benefit ape kind, which may be true, but compared to the human characters who appear to be taking small steps towards securing the planet back for themselves, was he really that bad? With his base located on the coastline, his goal is to access the interior of a crashed ship that he calls the Vault, which contains all sorts of stuff from books to weapons, and a mysterious hard drive that May wants to steal. For what it's worth, I do like how this sequence is written, where it's a fear of the unknown. What would Proximus be capable of if he does get inside the vault? And if he does get his hands on the weapons and the books, etc., this will definitely make him into more of a threat. As it typically goes, May and Noah set aside their differences and work together with several other apes, and their plan is to free the Eagle Clan but also destroy the contents of the ship by exploding a barrier holding back the ocean, and by opening the vault door, they will allow water to pour inside the vault and destroy all of the contents inside. Going back to what I mentioned briefly before, we do see the stuff inside the vault, and in my opinion, it really doesn't look as though it's aged 300 years. But I guess that is just debatable. But I do love the sequence where the apes find the books showing the world's history when humans were the dominant species, and I just love how this blows their minds, which may possibly influence Noah's future perception of mankind. With the explosives in position, the last step of the plan is simply to open the vault door and walk out before unleashing the ocean to destroy the contents. And all is seemingly well, only for our heroes to come face to face with Proximus himself. And for me, this was by far the most exhilarating part of the story. But despite working with Noah, May actually turns on him and all of the apes, not giving Noah the chance to save the Eagle Clan as promised. She got what she wanted having acquired the hard drive, and then pulls a gun on the apes, which was completely unexpected. I would therefore arguably say she is really the main villain of our story. Again, perhaps that is somewhat debatable, but ruining the contents of the vaults, the flood destroys everything inside as the apes struggle to find safe ground. Luckily, most of the Eagle Clan do survive, but so does Proximus. Bringing things full circle, the end sequence was arguably one of the most memorable moments, where Noah and Proximus are locked in a fight to the death. And it's looking pretty final for our hero, but then he starts chanting for the eagles. Something they did to train the birds in the first place, where the eagles are now following the clan around, only this time they start protecting Noah as they swoop down and attack Proximus, where he then falls to his death. Or does he? I'm really hoping he did survive the fall. I really love this character, and I definitely feel a revenge plot would be a suitable continuation in an inevitable sequel. But wrapping things up as they typically go, as always, the apes rebuild their society once again. In an odd twist, May actually confronts Noah one last time, and she even hides a gun behind her back, just in case things do go wrong, but their argument boils down to Noah simply calling out the betrayal at the coastline, realizing finally that apes don't matter to humans. Mankind wants to take back the planet, but it's just not that simple. Oh man, where do we even go from here? Well, a sequel is surely on the cards at this point. There's a lot of potential going forward from this film. It's been speculated that the modern Apes films could see 9 movies in total, which would be astonishing, and although somewhat formulaic, following the same kind of patterns and conventions, you really can't argue with the level of quality. Visually, these films are stunning. Assuming that this becomes the beginning of Noah's trilogy, here's hoping we explore new territory in whatever future possibilities lie ahead. I feel sadly that Kingdom is the weakest of the modern films so far, but it's certainly not a bad film. I'd say follow-up films that build on the newly established lore will help us appreciate Kingdom a lot more later down the line. It's just a shame that this was a non-eventful and fairly unexciting further venture beyond the arguably perfect trilogy that we had following Caesar. Anyway, that's going to do it for this review looking at Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. I hope you did enjoy. If you want to hear my further thoughts on the franchise, I did do a video several years ago ranking all 9 of the previous Planet of the Apes films. It is an older video, but it is one that I am genuinely very proud of and I really enjoyed making. Please leave a like if you enjoyed this review, let me know how you felt about the movie in the comments. As always, I love hearing your thoughts and opinions. And for more videos, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, DVD Review Studios.
Are you threatening me?